Breaking through the secrecy of the world's offshore tax centres was top of the agenda for G8 leaders in Northern Ireland. But as the dust settles in their meeting, and against a backdrop of protests against tax evasion and illicit finance, did they really agree enough to make this a critical moment, as UK Prime Minister David Cameron saw it?
The Lochern Declaration that we have signed sets out some simple and some clear commitments. Tax authorities across the world should automatically share information, so those who want to evade taxes have nowhere to hide. Companies should know who really owns them, and tax collectors and law enforcers should be able to obtain this information easily.
Cameron sent a message that we have to get our own house in order to the UK's Crown dependencies and overseas territories, some of which come very high in the rankings of the world's offshore financial centres, whose overall worth is estimated at $8.5 trillion. Switzerland comes first. After years of protesting against lack of change, many campaigners are giving the G8 plans a cautious welcome.
This is genuine progress. So G8 has actually moved things forward. Obviously, as campaigners, we'd love to see it move forward faster and further, and above all, bring in a wider variety of countries, particularly countries from the developing south. But nonetheless, G8 should be seen as a very important step forward because these issues are now firmly established on the international agenda.
And tax advisors say there are signs that attitudes are already changing towards the use of offshore centres and may be forced to change further, not just multinationals, but also wealthy individuals.
Increasingly, you do have people saying to you, I don't want anything remotely aggressive. Yes, I want to mitigate some tax liability, but anything that will potentially be viewed as unattractive or, even just subject to investigation or subject to debate, I don't want to do. And it is fair to say that that is different to the climate sort of 8 or 9 years ago.
For offshore centres, the fear of losing custom is very real. The British Virgin Islands, recently under the spotlight over a data leak, says it will sign up to Mr Cameron's proposals, but worries the playing field isn't level.
If the proposals which are being suggested right now are implemented initially to one set of countries, particularly if they're implemented initially with the overseas territories, and at a later time other countries are brought in line. By the time that later on time comes, maybe 6 months, maybe a year, the business from the overseas territory will have left. And this would do irreparable harm to the economy of those countries.
Campaigners agree this could be a problem.
We've seen this already with automatic information exchange. Europe has adopted automatic information exchange and there's been a clear displacement of activity away from the European arena, away from centres like Switzerland and Jersey, towards Singapore, Hong Kong and Mauritius. There's a real danger that if the measures aren't systemic in nature, in other words, aren't applied globally, then we'll see this displacement happening.
And when it comes to the role of companies facilitating corruption, it is not the offshore centres that rank highest, but in fact the US, according to the World Bank. Of course, most account holders are entirely legitimate, but states in the US, such as Delaware and Wyoming, are among the easiest places in the world to set up anonymous companies.
One thing that's actually very interesting is obviously we talk about offshore in terms of, we all imagine lying on a glorious beach in the Cayman Islands and people are squirreling away trillions. Certainly my experience with my colleagues is that that's very, very far from the case. And offshore often isn't what you think. It's interesting, we sometimes talk about people hiding in plain sight in a number of very classically onshore jurisdictions. Some US states, such as Delaware, offer extremely attractive degree of privacy.
She and campaigners believe the offshore centres that will survive are those offering genuine services to investors. But they know this is a political game. The states in the US are expected to resist making major changes, at least until other jurisdictions in Asia as well as Europe do. But will they do that unless the US does? Future meetings of a G8 could be the ground for further battles. Vanessa Houlder, Financial Times, London.